the morning sunrise. In Lions Gate, 'neath the tall fir trees, on your face feel the ocean breeze. Feel the magic that's in the air. In Lions Gate, the fair.
Welcome to a rather warm Lion's Den. I am Baron Kinrick. I hope everyone is finding some relief from the heat and can therefore enjoy tonight's panel. Tonight is a special panel we've put together on request. Our guests will be diving into the tips and tricks of looking great. These are the true king and queen makers as they bring together historical research, a keen eye, and a desire built over the decades to celebrate what looks good in period. Our guest moderator needs no introduction. Laurel, Pelican, Lion of Antir, Duchess Hlutwige has shaped the very fabric of our kingdom. Her wisdom, grace, and heart have taught us all to balance our passions with wisdom, yet not be afraid to just say what the hell and dive in with listening to your heart is the only way to forge the path ahead. One of my personal favorite SCA memories involved my attempt at Storm God when she was Baroness. It was a fun yet taxing competition, and I would like my own champion's tourney to emulate the Storm God formula. So we are excited today to bring you a new kind of panel as we examine how people thought and celebrate fashion, class, and the human form. Take it away, Hlutwige.
I'm honored, Excellency. Thank you very kindly, and a little verklempt. So, golly, thanks. It's quite the introduction. Well, we're just going to dive right in. As I mentioned earlier, though not everybody was here, our panelists are Her Grace Kaaren, Daphne Achaxe, His Lordship Teadoir, Sir Rithkin, and Magistra Marya, and I hope I have the right title for you, Marya, or at least that is acceptable. So I'd like to start with Her Grace Kaaren, put her on the spot first, and I'd like you to kind of give us just a little rundown of how you found the SCA, and what is it that brought you into the SCA, and when that was.
Oh my gosh, like 25 years ago. I was working with a woman who did SCA stuff, and we all dressed up in her garb for Halloween one year, and then she took me to a war, and then I don't know. So what brought me back was meeting interesting people and camping, and I like to make things, and so here I am.
Lovely, thank you. Daphne Achaxe, tell us about you a little bit and your introductions to the SCA.
You're muted.
That's awesome. Sorry about that. My first event was 30th year. I had a couple of exposures to the SCA. One was in an Irish bar, and one was through the jewelry company that I worked for. And I came in through heavy fighting, and working at TSI, there were a lot of artists coming in, including His Grace Duke Torgal. And just watching what people were creating and talking to them about it was super exciting. So, and then eventually I apprenticed to Her Grace Hlutwige, and I learned a lot. And I'm still here because I love making stuff and making other people look and feel fabulous in their SCA clothes and seen.
Thank you. Something else I want to say, there's always the possibility that because of the heat, we're going to have power outages. And so just kind of try to hang on and bear with any technical difficulties, because we don't really have a lot of control over much of that. Let's see. Teadoir, please step up to the mic and tell us about yourself and your introduction to the SCA.
So when I think I was about 14, one of my friends came running up and, dude, there's these like dudes down there at the park, and they're like knights, and they fight in armor, and when we get 15 we can become archers, and then when we're 18 we can fight in armor, and oh yeah, let's do that. And then we hit 15 or 16 or whatever it was, and whatever group had been practicing down there was no longer there. So I just knew that there was this organization out there, and for years I hunted for them. And I think I was 18, 19, going to UCSD down in San Diego, and there was a local group on campus, and they had a booth at one of the campus organizational deals, and that's how I finally hooked up with the SCA. And now, many moons later, I'm still palling around with some of y'all. I just always loved the Tolkien-esque medieval thing, and so I instantly fell in love with the SCA, and it gave me an outlet to create and to make and to learn. So, I mean, what more could you possibly ask for? So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Teadoir. Marya, Kargashina, step up to the mic.
Hello. So I didn't find the SCA when I was 14, but I found the medieval folks out in Carnation, Camlin. And so by the time I got to college and found the SCA, I was all ready to go. Mostly because I wanted to make pretty clothes. Oh, and then I could hit things with sticks too. Excellent. And then here we are.
Super. And I haven't thought about Camlin Vera for years. That's amazing. And Sarithkin.
My sister introduced me to the SCA. I fell in love with the fighting. I've always been kind of crafty, and the SCA is that kind of hobby that lets you do everything, like art, be physical, athletic, serve, and so it sort of becomes all encompassing and becomes your friends, and that's why I'm here.
All right, thank you. So my first question for all of you, and I think it is appropriate for this particular venue, is what is embellishment? What do we, mostly people I think of as embellishment as, well, it's embroidery, or it is some kind of textile application. But embellishment can be much more than that, metal applique, or and then just regular applique. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what you guys think embellishment actually covers for our various guests, and maybe talk about what is your favorite embellishment too. So just I didn't introduce myself. I'm sorry. Hlutwige started in May 1st of AS16. Manfred made me do it. There. So just chime in, any of our panelists, about what you think of as embellishment. I certainly was one who used to think that embellishment was just needle and thread, but it really is more than that. So let's talk about what more it is.
Okay, I'll go first. I I am sort of a needle and thread embellisher. Right now I'm working on seam treatments. So that's part of embellishment. I think that's probably how embellishment started, was a form of making the clothing more sturdy. I also do applique and metal plaques and embroidery. So that's kind of where I come at embellishment from. Next.
Dive in, you guys.
All right. So I've never really been super into the embroidery thing. I mean, I can do it, but other people are better at it and enjoy it more. But we've got things like printing. We've got all the pearls on the planet, speaking as a Russian, all your different sorts of beading. I'm going to again mention the metal plaques. And then what I dearly love is the combining of all of these things together into one thing, which of course can be this fortress of blingitude.
Blingitude. I'm going to have to add that to my words that I loathe. How about you, Kaaren?
Sorry. Embellishment, just like decorating things, right? Whether it's stitches or jewelry or stitches in jewelry, fancy accessories. Yeah, I'm more the needle girl, but I don't always follow all the rules. I would have been that Norse girl that it's like, I want more bling. I'm gonna embroider a picture on my thing. So it's just fun. I mean, I'm all about the really simple stuff too. I think a little goes a long way. Like, there's nothing sexier than just a seam dimple, you know, from just tacking down the seams. Just a little stitching along a neckline or something. Of course, I'm wearing the dress that has nothing, but
I know what you mean. It makes
you don't have to have like mad embroidery skills to, you know, bling something up with just couching a piece of yarn around the neck or something.
Stem stitch is my go-to. Just a stem stitch in a complementary color or even a clashing color. I do like the clashing. So yeah, embellishment doesn't have to be super complex. Rifkin?
Yeah.
Sure. So I like to embellish not just fabric, but shields, armor. I like to think about it as it's actually the fun part for me, because you get to give your fabric depth, your clothes and your armor character. So you can do that with card woven trim. You can do that with embroidery. You can paint things. I paint everything. I love pearls. I do a lot of embroidery, a lot of applique. I make posament. I make wire stuff for my Norse aprons. So I think it's really sort of unlimited, and just even like fabric stamping will give so much more depth to your fabric and make, you know, that fabricstore.com linen that everybody has, it'll make yours look different. So that's why I love it.
And stamping too, you don't have to invest a great deal of money. You can make a potato stamp.
Yeah.
And use acrylic paint or whatever and do that. It's super easy.
You can use your leftover house paint, because, you know, that stuff doesn't come off of anything.
That's true. I'm sure there are preferred methods to do large pieces of cloth that Marya certainly could address more thoroughly. But for something that is simple and affordable, stamping is a nice idea.
Piece of Rifkin posament.
Very nice. I have never done that. I find that so considering we had Athenaeum this weekend, one of the things I said to both of the people I had some time with was, don't do things that you don't like to do. Like, if you don't want to do embroidery and you want to tailor clothes, don't worry about it. Go ahead and do what you enjoy doing, and find somebody who enjoys doing the embroidery and help them learn how to do the embroidery appropriate for your tailoring. Don't torture yourself by doing stuff that you don't enjoy. Like, I remember I thought, like everybody else in the SCA, I wanted to learn card weaving because Goditha from Tiri did some amazing. I mean, she really was the woman who trotted card weaving into Ontario and showed everybody, look at how groovy this can be. And I thought, oh, I want to do that. That's neat. I want to card weave. Oh no, I tried it. Island of Cumbria lent me her cards and her weaving frame, and I tried it, and I got about 6 inches and said, oh, well, okay, yeah, I hate this. I understand it now. Super. I got it. Thanks. But no, I'm not doing that, and I've never done it again. I still have a loom, however, and cards in my sewing room, because I keep thinking someday maybe I'll go back and try it again. But yeah, don't do things you hate.
Giving it a try probably makes it a lot easier for you to not balk at the cost of paying somebody else to do it for you. So you know how tedious and difficult it can be.
Absolutely. Pay your artisans what they are worth. Driffa, I purchased a beautiful red belt from her as an apprenticeship belt. And yeah, I paid for it because it was stunning, and I was never going to do that. And you can't go out and just buy that from fabric.com.
I have a slightly looser interpretation of embellishment, because what is embellishment is to add to make more. Of course, you know, there's the applique, there's the embroidery, but there's also, as we've mentioned, the printing, or, you know, there's all these things that you can do. But to my mind, you know, using period patterning can be a form of embellishment, because you can make a simple tea tunic, you know, just cut out that plus sign. But if you actually have the extra seams in the places, that's, you're making a more interesting garment. So I think, as has been mentioned, less can be more, right? So if you know, a rolled hem on a cuff, it's something that people are going to notice. And then if you add a little bit of stitch work to that, you can oftentimes showcase a lot of detail very simply, and that can be very striking.
Yeah, Kaaren mentioned that a little bit, just that dimple of what the thread that the needle picks up when you're hand finishing a seam is just, it's beautiful. And so yeah, you're absolutely right. Those kinds of things, and piecing, not just using a giant piece of fabric to cut your giant tea tunic out, but narrowing it down and using every bit of fabric. Achaxe knows, she gave me some beautiful wool years ago, and I didn't have enough to make a short tunic, and I really wanted a short tunic. So I used every square inch of that wool, putting it together. Each little piece was hand finished and then stitched together. And now I gave it to an apprentice because I can't wear it anymore. But it's a beautiful tunic, and I love it. I love all the little pieces of fabric that are put together. And I was talking about some of the Chinese and Mongolian garments from first century with one of the presenters this weekend, and there are a lot of those garments that were pieced a lot, just, you know, 20 or 30 pieces of fabric put together.
Yeah, there's a ridiculous number of panels in this coat, and you know, I've got a little bit of tablet woven trim on it, but you know, some brass buttons, but mostly it's when you get up close to it and see it, you see that dimpling, because I figured out how to fake that with a sewing machine, and that was one of the best things I ever did. So it doesn't have to kill you. And like you say, if you hate embroidery, you know, find something else. And it doesn't have to be this super painful thing to be impressive. You know, I had Miranda come up to me one time and say, "Pants," and start fingering my pants. It's, "Did you hand sew those?" And I said, "Nope, I faked it on a sewing machine." And she's like, "That's even cooler." So, you know, it doesn't have to kill you to do this stuff.
I
It
actually
just has to look good.
actually have that as a question. What's your favorite cheat? But we'll get to that a little bit later.
Are those your striped pants? And the
Yes.
stripes are different fabrics? I remember those pants.
Oh my
Maybe I
God.
was there when she looked at.
When did that kid get so big?
Yeah, how did that happen?
What the heck? What the heck? Sorry.
Yeah, that's the thing I put the most work into. But Daddy's in the middle of something. Scoop, scoop, scoop. Go tend the goats.
Anybody else have something to say on that particular subject of what is embellishment? I think we kind of covered. Does anybody have any questions about that? Oh, how is that done? The dimples, or will that get covered? Well, let's talk about that. So the dimple that we're talking about, if you're hand sewing, you take a kind of a larger stitch on the back in the seam. Oh, Achaxe might be able to show us with her thing that she's looking at, and then just a tiny bit of the fabric in the front so that it dimples in where the stitch was taken. You can take larger stitches as well if you want to.
This is really thick wool, so it's but that's the back side.
If you guys make a Achaxe larger window under your view in your upper right hand corner, and then she shows you that, you might actually be able to see it if you want to see what we're talking about.
And
Let me-
Karen's got some there too.
Yeah. So make Kaaren big and she'll be able to show you what we're talking about. Oh, right. Well, that was the Wendy is asking, she understands how it's done, but how is it done by machine? Well, let's just skip to the cheats then, because I have several cheats, and Teadoir has mentioned his groovy cheat. So let's find out. So the question is, and what is your favorite treatment, and what are your, and I shouldn't call it cheats. I should say what your tricks are for getting a groovy effect without killing yourself. Go ahead, Teadoir.
So I discovered that if you you double your seam allowance, right? And then you turn it under and iron it. And then if you treat it like a blind hem and you use a blind hem stitch on your sewing machine, it will, and it takes some practice to get it right, because you've got your fabric coming like so. You have your seam. So now you have to turn your fabric out like so, if that's making any sense. And you're stitching here. Lord, I don't know if I even remember how to do it. I've done tons of it, and it would probably take me 5 or 10 minutes to remember how to do it properly. But yeah, you just use the blind hem stitch on your sewing machine, and that catch is what shows, and it binds down your edges. It encases your edges, and it looks like you've hand sewn it. So it gives you a very strong treatment that looks fancy.
That is an excellent idea, and I would never have thought of it. I've never thought to use the hem stitch on anything but a hem, but yeah, that makes perfect sense.
It gets really horrible though when you're getting into an armpit and you've got gores and gussets and everything coming together, but it can be done.
Probably easier to just do it by hand once you get in there.
I do parts of it by machine, and then come back and get the final pieces by hand oftentimes, because it's just easier. It's funny when something's easier to do by hand than do it with machine.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people use their sewing machines to do straight seams and then go back in to do hand finishing or whatever. But yeah, that's a great idea. I love that idea. I always feel like I'm kind of cheating myself, because I work on other people's clothes a lot, and I like to really do all the hand stitching for that, and then I sew mine, I'll just blast it out on the sewing machine. So using that technique, I might feel a little better about it. Thanks, Teadoir. Anybody else have a really neat trick they like to use? I know Achaxe and I believe in glue, we trust glue.
So I can't let that go without it commenting on it because my daughter just hot glued a waistband. She cut a top off of a dress and then hot glued the waistband shut because she hates sewing. And it worked, and it's staying shut, and it's really awesome. But I don't do that. The glue that Her Grace is talking about is a heat and bond or a Wonder Under tracing paper that you trace out your design, and then you iron it. It basically makes your design an iron-on that holds it in place. Then you can stitch it down. So that's my big modern cheat for, but also it's like a modern interpretation of a period glue that would have been used.
And I've used some hide glue to do that just for because I can. It's stinky. The heat and bond is a lot less smelly and a lot faster, but it is, like you said, just a modern representation of the period aesthetic, I think. Anybody else have a contribution to that?
Got a couple. Sometimes I think the whole block printing thing is one giant conceit because I don't have that fabric, so I'm gonna make it, right? But the thing I've been doing a lot lately, which is silly, but I love it, is rather than trying to track down sew-on studs, because trapezoidal pyramidal square studs are totally period in their appearance, I'm totally going to use the push in and fold under ones, and then I have to glue them. Otherwise they fall out. But they're still a lot easier than sewing that many little tiny stitches.
I have a little trick for that as well when you are laying out nail heads. Because I did a few garments for Miranda when she was queen. Uh-oh. When she was queen, everybody has to drink. Laying them out in the pattern that you want, and then using just regular Scotch tape or sellotape, taping the tops of them so they stay where they're supposed to be. Then you can turn the entire piece of fabric over and push those little pointy parts of the nail heads down instead of doing one at a time, which I've also done, but this is a lot faster.
I think there was some masking tape involved on that one diadem thing.
Where was that tape advice when I was working on this last week?
Sorry. Well, now you know. What about some other ways to kind of make yourself not go crazy when you're doing embellishments? Anybody have any tricks that they want to share?
Have we all done the thing where we want to wear it tomorrow, but it's not quite done yet? So you just like finish the seams as far as they show, like up under your, like your underdress, just around the hem and the sleeves and stuff. And then all the stuff that's covered by the other dress, I'll do it later.
And then I don't.
I think everybody has their own favorite treatment. All of us have our own different things that we really like to do, or that we do more often, or that we are best skilled at. So what are those kinds of things that you guys have? Maybe one or two or three treatments that you really enjoy doing and you think you're very, very good at.
I think it's more of an addiction than, something I'm really, really good at. But I do Van Dyke stitching over all of the seams of my garments. And for the Scythian period ones, it would probably be more appropriate to use a hand woven braided piece of fabric. But this looks like a braid once it's down, and it's what I do. So, yeah. What was the question? Sorry, brain.
What your favorite things are to do that you do more often? I mean, you do a lot of applique and a lot of other embellishments. What do you really crave to do?
The applique, I guess it goes through phases. Sometimes, like I really enjoyed doing, I don't know if you can see that, the embroidery down the front of this. And then it felt like a really good kind of immediate gratification project to just get all these plaques on here. So that went really fast compared to a lot of the hand finished seams, and that's lined, and that was a lot faster than hand finishing all the seams of the garment too. So maybe that's sort of a sneaky shortcut.
Anybody else?
So I'll say something. I've been using a lot of silk on hems and other things. And one of the tricks that I do is I edge the silk on both sides with bias tape. And then I sew the bottom bias tape by machine to the bottom, and then I just flip it up. And then all I have to do is whip stitch the top down, and you get a really nice line. And then I'll dart, if it's round, I'll dart it before I put on the top. And then I'll put the bias tape on the top, and then you don't have to worry about it not sitting well because you've already measured it out, if that makes sense. And also, I'll often, if I'm not bias taping the silk, but I'm going to put like card woven trim over it, I'll just sew the silk down with the machine and then put the card weaving over the machine sew, and you never know it's there. So
That's
anything
great.
anything that keeps it there while you're working.
So it's funny, my little trick there with the blind hem stitch. I hate doing it, but at the same time, I enjoy doing it because once I hold up a piece of the work and I can see it, it feels really good. The stripy pants that I kind of got known for a bit there. Those, and I use the same treatment on those too. So it's a horrible booger, but using the contrasting fabrics. So as you're working on building the garment itself, and even when it's only half done, you still have a bit of that self gratification there with the you can already see that fanciness in there. But I strangely love just doing a simple chain stitch along a seam, because you can just sit there watching Supernatural or something, and you're just dup 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 dup, and it's almost meditative. It's just, like I said, strangely enjoyable when you get into that rhythm. Of course, then you screw up one of them and you realize that you did it 15 stitches back and you have to undo the whole thing. But we won't go into that.
So I've struggled with a lot of very light fabrics. There's a lot of beautiful translucent and transparent silks that are in Asiatic clothing, but they are a bear to sew. And it was, especially whether it's hand or on the machine. And years ago, Dagmar taught me something that I had never even conceived of, especially with really light fabrics. And you can, and that is adding another layer. So you have your seam, right, that you're going to sew together of the silks. And then you add another layer, like an inch wide or 3/4 of an inch wide, that is it's a stabilizing effect on the seam. And then you use that to go over the raw edges of the seam and stitch it down. And it just looks fabulous. You can do it either by hand or on the machine. It just doesn't matter. It just is a really great look. And I love I have some very gauzy silk that I wanted to have as a tunic, and I tried sewing it together, just those two pieces together, and it was insane. And then I added another layer of a finer silk in a contrasting color, and so all of the seams are actually on the outside of the garment with the contrasting color covering the seams. And it's just a beautiful treatment that's just super clever. And I wish I had known it 25 years ago. It would have made me really happy. But now I do it almost all the time, especially with lighter fabrics. I like to have that extra piece on there to stabilize the seam. And then all of my seams they are perfectly covered. They're never going to fray. The garment's going to last until I accidentally set it on fire.
I learned a really cool trick about after I made a mundane thing for someone out of chiffon. And I was saying, never, if anybody ever hears me say the word chiffon again, like stop me. And my friend's husband said, you know, when you're trying to cut something that fine and the fabric, like you can't cut a straight line. And he said, put painter's tape on the chiffon and then cut it, sew it, and then just pull the tape off. I love that covering with the, I want you to show me that seam treatment thing too.
I will happily do that. Or though Dagmar could do it too.
That's super cool.
Yeah, it does look great. I could probably run up and get it at some point. So does anybody want to add to that currently your favorite treatments, or and that's great if you want to. We actually have a short kind of photo thingy that everybody sent in some pictures. I think now would be a good time if you know, we can talk about each of the pictures, and I think everybody has something that's in the photo gallery. So, and here we go. Look at that. It's like magic. Go ahead. I believe these are Kaaren's.
That's this hat right here, the white one. So I like making things. I like mixing it all up, like some wool and some silk and some this stitch and some that stitch and some beads and some. And I don't know if that's period or not. I mean, with like the Norse panel, we know we kind of assume they had the panels because of the layers under the brooches and the grave sites, but we don't really know what was on them and stuff. So when I'm doing something like that, I try and at least use elements that are period, and, you know, I don't know, maybe they did pictures and maybe they didn't, I don't know, but I wanted a picture on mine. So, but like that tree is the style of a tree that's on a runestone, and that bird, and then the little Valkyries are like those little miniature Valkyries, and that seam treatment along the burgundy strip on the bottom is like off of an extant piece, and the possument Rifkin made for me, and that's a hand woven panel. And I just put it all together how I liked it.
I really like the little treatment you have on that green tunic just there at the bottom of the neckline. That's a lovely little cushion.
I have it right here. Yeah, it's just it's just a piece of yarn that's couched down. I don't know if, can you see that?
Well,
yeah,
we can.
Just super simple.
All right.
That's what I was talking about. It's sometimes like, it doesn't have to be a big deal. It can just be super simple.
You are not wrong. All right, next photo, please.
Oh, this is my coat. Okay, so everybody get ready to drink. When I ran the second time, we did 14th century Persian, and at the beginning of the reign, well, in the West, there's like 4 or 5 weeks between crown and stepping up. So I had this coat, but it didn't have all this embellishment on it. The cloud collar part, the one on the right is the bottom of the back of the coat. And there's another picture that has the actual cloud collar. But anyway, I didn't have time to do much except the roses. So I told the populace that when somebody did a good deed, I wanted to know about it. And for every good deed, I was going to put a bead on the coat. And I said something like, you know, something cool, like the beauty of the kingdom would be reflected in the coat. So I don't know. And then somebody did all that embroidery for me, and I laid it all out and designed it all, and then she took it and started embroidering. And you can kind of see to the left and the right of that rose, see that they look patched on? It's because they're patched on. People from the Embroiderers Guild took them to events and had people stitch on them. And then we added them all to the coat and stuff. Anyway, by the end of the reign, there was this beautiful coat. And the terraz around the bottom is a piece of a poem. It's a piece of an 11th century Persian poem that says, I hope I get this right. A little and a little collected together become a great thing, and drop form an inundation. And so that's the cool story about the coat.
Nice.
And that's some heavy duty embellishment, like a cloud color. That's a lot of embroidery, but and if I have things like that, it's not because I made them. Because I mean, that would take years. I don't know. Anyway, but I just thought it was a cool story, and something that turned out embellished beautifully. So,
all right, next.
There's more of the coat. Yeah. Yeah. Heavily embroidered cloud collars were a thing. So that's what we created. So
I love things like that are a community.
Yeah. Yeah. I was really excited about that.
So this is the Champion of Storm God cloak. It is applique in cotton, on cotton, and done completely on machine. And I just love them so much. And there is a large amount of glue involved.
I adore the heraldic gorgeousness of this whole set.
Yeah, I do too. I like it a lot. But the,
Lugia, how do you get your rounds to be so round on the machine?
I slow way down, and I actually stop every few stitches and turn just a little tiny bit. And then I do stitches, then I turn just a little tiny bit. And some of them are, the bigger ones that you see here, like on these curlicues. You can do that by just forcing it, forcing the machine to do your will is basically it. But the little tiny ones are just slowing down, doing a few stitches, turning a micron, doing a couple stitches, turning a micron, doing a couple stitches. And then I really, really like the way that the points of all of those things come out. And that is, just making sure that your needle is in the right position when you're ready to turn, or actually just stopping at a point and going and cutting your thread and then turning the whole thing and going and starting again at the point, so that it's nice and sharp. Next, please. Go ahead.
When you turn around those curves, you want to make sure that your needle is in the fabric when you turn, and that it's on the outer curve and not the inner curve. Because if it's on the outer curve, there won't be any gaps on the other side. If your needle's on the inner curve, it'll leave gaps on your outer side.
Little V shapes. Yeah. So yes, she's absolutely right. Clever girl.
I learned
this is, whose jacket is this? Is this your jacket? No? Or is this? No, this is Arian's.
Yeah,
this is Arian's jacket. So I made this leather jacket for Master Arian the Wanderer when he was elevated to the Order of the Laurel a few years ago. And it is linen and silk on leather. The in chain stitch. I don't know what else to say about that. So it's actually embroidered into the face of the leather, which I don't recommend unless you have a nice sharp needle.
I have a question. The stitching around the circles, is that just a whip stitch?
It's a chain stitch.
Around that's holding down the blue circles?
Oh, you know what? I'm not sure. Let me see if I can zoom in. Can we zoom in on that by chance? On the I'm not in charge of the screen. On the the circles that were on that. That's a pretty picture. The little blue circles on the sleeves.
I think they're with
I don't
some-
remember. I think I blanket stitched them down. Pretty sure,
Okay.
but I don't quite recall. And I don't have that jacket anymore. And I think there might have been a close up. Oh, you know what? It's right there. I just can't see it because of you guys are in the way. Yeah, that's a blanket stitch.
Okay.
I think I did a blanket stitch.
I'm just not seeing the thread around this outside that a blanket stitch would have, especially up in that top one.
Oh yeah, you're right. I think of it as a blanket stitch, but it is not. It's just a straight down through the leather, up through the dark blue, down through the leather, just trying to keep those stitches all nicely straight. So yeah, not technically a blanket stitch. Continue, please.
It's me.
You.
So Her Grace Kiva pulled these. So the headpiece that I'm wearing is about 22, 23 years old. So you can see some of the plaques are coming up. But those are all pieces that I found like in bargain. Well, some of them aren't bargain bin. The square pieces are bargain bin at the bead store. And the rest are just different findings that I found at the bead store. The ones with the pearls in them are little flowers with holes in the center. And so I use the pearls to hold them down. And then the round ones that have the dangly bits, I just sort of used wire bending to create the dangly bits. And that the headpiece itself is a piece of wool, wonder undered to a silk backing to keep it nice, with a canvas inner lining to keep it nice and stiff. And then the tunic behind that is a yellow wool tunic with ultra suede cutout appliques. And the edging of the neckline is it's just like a sewn down wool band that's got decorative running stitch along it in a different color to add interest. And then in the top right picture, those are a pair of wool booties that I felted that are decorated again with plaques that were bargain bin at the bead store. They have holes in the center. So again, I used pearls to hold them down. And then the stitching around them is a running stitch. And these are also over 20 years old and have been really well worn. The edging of the booty is done in an a blue like buttonhole hand stitching. The felt that those are on is a saddle blanket that's got applique that's used with that wonder under technique. And then the bottom right is the coat that I just finished, and that's chain stitch embroidery on wool. And then the super tiny little metal nail heads are actual bedazzler pieces, and I used my bedazzler while putting them on. I bend the little prongs down by hand, and then I use the cheesy bedazzler to put them in place. And then the big plaques are sewn down, and the square or diamond shaped ones are also pronged. So, and the fabric came like that. It already had the silver wrapped, the foil wrapped threads through it, and it was already patterned like that. So, and that was bargain bin wool. And that's all I have to say about those pictures.
You told me a really cool thing about the ultra suede. You gave me a trick once. You said if I find ultra suede, to look at the back and make sure that it's not the woven back, because the woven back you end up with little shredded bits. So if anybody's going to use ultra suede, that was a cool trick that Achaxe taught me.
And the reason why I use ultra suede is because I have kids and it's washable, and my grandmother had a lot of garments made out of it in the 60s and 70s, and I have all of those, and so I'm able to upcycle that clothing into applique on SCA clothes. So
That is excellent. All right.
Can I
Okay.
jump in for just a moment here? Sorry to be intrusive.
All
I
right.
just posted in the, is Jacqueline calling or speaking? If people want to zoom in on things, there's a way that you can do that through the view options, and I've just put instructions in the chat.
Thank you. So these are banners made for Alicia de Camberwell for her laureling ceremony, and these are silk reverse applique, I believe is what it's called, so that they're transparent or translucent. The silk is you sew it all together basically and cut away everything that's not a banner. that's the only way I can put it. And it's a machine sewn zigzag, a zigzag stitch. All those pieces are sewn together. And I did use an adhesive between the various layers of silk and to help maintain the integrity, because it's shantung silk. So it's very fine and thin and needed a little extra something. I'm really happy with the way they came out. She really liked them, so that's, I guess, the best part of that. Thank you. Let's go on. Ah, yes, the things we were talking about. So these are garments made for Duchess Miranda during her various reigns. The one on the left is inspired by Tillya Tepe garments and is heavily treated with nail heads. And you can see that some of the nail heads have red centers and some of them have kind of an aqua blue center. That is paint. They are not enameled. They are enameled with regular modern paint, which she was fine with. I really like it. And with this is how that technique I used earlier with the Scotch tape. It's exactly how I did this. Laid them all out, taped them, turned the garment over, and pushed in all the little pointy bits. The middle one is applique. It's faux leather applique on wool with a silk lining. And the one on the right is cotton and silk, cotton lining and a silk exterior with plaques that are stitched in place that I've had probably for years, or Miranda found them or something like that. And I just make a nice little ensemble for her. Any questions about any of that, I suppose, but let's go on. This is, so that we're talking about embellishment. So this is all painted. This is the center part of the achievement banner I made for the 50th year celebration. If you go to the next picture, you can see it in its entirety. These represent, the flowers on the bottom represent the 3 baronies that contributed to the project. And then there's the forget me not, the sable, or the not the sable rose, the black rose that we give.
Belated.
Thank you, belated rose, and then the rose of Lady Rose, silver, and Valor's Estate, and then the silver rose and the silver lily, because I could. So let's go to the next picture so you can get a better idea of the overall thing. So there it is in all its glory. And then the one on the right is the first painted banner I did in honor of Her Serene Highness Janeltis. I don't really have much to say about that, but I think of it as embellishment. I have embellished the fabric just like we would do if we used stamps or some such thing. Let's go on. This is applique again these are cotton on cotton and machine sewn. This is the central piece for the Barony of Dragon's Mists, Baron and Baroness cloaks. I love that dragon face so much. And the laurel wreath just makes me really happy. One more picture of those, I think. So this is instead of just doing a plain nebulae, I decided to do layers of nebulae. So these are painted on the applique piece, and I incorporated in the mist of the nebulae different things that represented the past barons and baronesses and the current baron and baroness at the time, and all the baronial awards. So secretly put in various places are these little gray figures that represent a variety of things. Let's go on. And yes, that was the Mano de Oro on Janeltis banner. All right, and these are more styles of embellishment. The upper and the ones on the left are couched silk on linen, based on a design that was a bridal part of a bridal, the Pazarique bridal, that I took the elements from that and turned it into embellishment. The one on the upper quadrant is laid gold for His Grace Tiernan Del Kai, and then more of the, sorry that the quality of that photograph is not very good. That's my fault. That's more of the plaques for another garment that I did for Miranda. Lots and lots of little plaques, little nail heads. Let's go on. These are also stuff that I did. On the left is Achaxe's knighting jacket that is ultra suede and itsy bitsy teeny tiny little stitches, and it's on linen. I think it's either linen or hemp now, I can't remember. Hemp, he says it's hemp. And all of the pieces were finished and then put together with the proverbial baseball stitch, and then the applique and nail heads were added. The upper right is my first attempt, and insane attempt, at doing tambour needle stitch. It's silk on wool. And for those of you who don't know what tambour needle stitch is, it's a teeny tiny little needle that basically is a little very sharp crochet needle that you puncture through the fabric, pick up the embroidery thread, pull it back through, and it makes a little chain stitch. So it's not hand done chain stitch, it's actually tambour needle stitch. In studying that after the fact, I have not found any extant pieces of anything or any reference anywhere of tambour needle stitch being done on wool. And after making that coat, I know why, because the tambour needle sticks in the wool almost every stitch. It was torture. It was absolute torture, but I did a lot of it, so that made it okay. And then the lower picture is Groa's county scroll that is applique and paint on wool. Okay. Next, please. This is a reconstruction of the Xiongnu carpet found in a 1st century Telmius in the Ukok, and it is a variety of techniques. All of the applique pieces that are there, all of the little mosaics that frame the centerpiece, and the animals are all quilted with silk in little teeny tiny stitches. I don't think there's a close-up of that. There might be. And then the central portion is actually, I did a chain stitch. I was wrong to do a chain stitch. It's actually a couched stitch. The spirals in the center should be couched, but that will be corrected in my next 2 carpets that I make. And that was at Miami University, Oxford, Ohio. All right, somebody else.
That's just more of that coat for some reason.
Okay, that's fine. I like the edging. This is couched work. Another
So you
Miranda.
could skip to the next slide.
This one is couched work for another garment for Miranda. It's cotton on cotton.
We already talked about it.
We did? We did. We moved on. Is your screen not moved on? All right, well, let's go on to the next one. How weird. There we go. Rauokinn.
You I was seeing your couched work, so.
Well, we can go back. That's weird. Yeah. There. Couch work.
Do you draw that on first?
Yes, I actually make a light cardboard pattern since it's a repeating pattern, and I just draw with a little bit of pencil. Just draw it in place, and then the edge is just couched rows of yellow and blue. Yes, I cheat as much as possible. Okay.
Okay, this is me. There's some posciment on the right, and that's tentrod that you sort of knot into patterns. You can buy a tentrod on Etsy. And then the other one is a front panel that I did for myself that has posciment with, I don't know if that's mica or mirrors behind it. It looks like mica to me. So I bought some mica and used the mica behind the posciment. And then the lion up there is bigger than it probably would have been. Well, a lot bigger than it probably would have been in period. But that's all just, I wove that in wire. And it also, I think that one has mirrors behind it that Vandy made.
I love that.
Then, yeah. And then, you know, I just put some silk on there. And I think the silk has paillettes on it to make it shiny. And then I think I wove the green and yellow card woven trim that's on those lions. And then the brocaded trim I bought probably on Etsy. And so that's just sort of an example of all the things you can do with layering applique, like silk applique. Like anything that isn't diamond twill on there is silk. And then I edged it all in silk so that it just gives you a really nice clean line. And you know, you just use a whole bunch of different things in complementary colors and it turns out kind of cool. So
I agree. I think that's beautiful. Let's go to our next one.
oh, these are me too. So these actually both turned into Hedeby bags. The one on the left was for Duke Sven for his birthday. Again, I appliqued silk on, I appliqued some brocaded trim that I bought. I did not make that. And then some plaques. And then, yeah, so.
Oh, those plaques are great. Did you have those made or did you find them somewhere?
I found them. I really, whenever I'm bored, I surf Etsy and I find cool stuff. So then the other thing, I am practicing gold work because I want to make Countess E her lion scroll. So I bought a kit for a rat and my friend likes rats. So she was knighted a couple years ago. So I made her a pink chain because she loves pink. And I made that into a bag. So you can take your little sample that you're working on and you can do cool things with it. And I love the gold work. I'm kind of a crow or a raven. I like shiny stuff. So
That's lovely.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Oh, this is me too.
There he is in all his glory.
Yeah, so that's an Etruscan outfit that I made for Sven. And you can't really see it, but like this has a whole bunch of different things going on. The red tunic, I actually painted by hand little dots, and the whole thing is diapered in little dots that are 3 dots together. It gives it a really nice depth in person. And then I appliqued the silk, the checky silk on the bottom, and that also has plaques and they're lion heads. And I think he has lions and lotuses on the top that's appliqued around the neck. And then his tabena, which is the mantle thing, that was all stamped. And then I went back over the stamps and hand painted it to give it a nice rich look. If you're gonna go for a painted look, it's kind of cool to start with stamps and then go back around it. And if you outline your paint, it gives you a really nice, beautiful edge. And in person, that tabena is pretty striking.
Well, it's pretty nice here too.
Yeah, and then I think his hat has some card woven trim that I made. And then his banner, I made this banner for him for, I don't know, a long time ago. But that is all applique. And then I think the lion has couched silk over it to give it detail. And then I couched, you can't really see it in the picture, but there's couched gold work over the crowns, and then couched silver work on the ermine. And then I used findings on the edges, and then I attached ribbons to the findings. That was a super fun project. I guess there's silver around the chain too. And then the one below that is not for Sven. That was a Sport of Kings cloak I did the last time we had Sport of Kings. I wanted to do, they usually do a Norse type cloak. And I decided I wanted to do a Byzantine cloak over, modeled on the Roger II mantle. And Kalja was on board with that. And I had some help with that. I did not do that all by myself. I did a lot of it by myself. I'd say about 85%, but that has pearls all over it. The words on the edges are painted in gold. The lions and the tree are all silk applique with gold couched around the borders. The front is all pearls and silk applique with gold couched around the borders. And I think there's gold beads on it too up there. You can't see them, as well as cloisonne beads. And I think between the words on the edging, there are plaques, and you can't see the bottom, but there's a crown there, the onto your crown, and that's all appliqued on and couched with gold and then pearls around it. And then the lining is actually block printed with the Sport of Kings logo and put on there. So it was a project that took almost a year with some help. Oh, and Driffa did a card woven band around the bottom. You can see that because the extant piece has a card woven band. I think it turned out pretty good. The guy that ended up with it likes it, so all good.
He better. Sorry.
Can we go back to the bags for just a moment?
Sure.
Yeah. Go backward one more, I think. There you go.
So the bag on the left there is obviously quite striking, but I just wanted to point out that even if it was just the chain stitch there and the because that's all seam, yes?
Yes, it's all seam.
And then on the rows of stitches going down the sides, that's that tacking down the seam on the inside.
Right, it's a running stitch and then a Van Dyke stitch.
And so even just if the bag was just that, it would still be very striking. And that's, I think, something that people should remember, is that you don't have to go to the most extravagant lengths, although obviously, the most extravagant lengths are awesome. But just a simple treatment, with those colors, and then with the, is that a silk that you have around the mouth, or that,
It is
that
silk.
kind of, yeah. See, just with those two elements, that makes a striking bag. And those were the things that, obviously we only have so much time and so on. And we tend to not think about those sort of things as worthy of discussion, but it's still very striking. And even if that's all you did, you would still have a very striking piece. And it's just a good thing to remember. That's how I tend to. I'm also interrupting here because I don't have any pictures in this. That's the direction I tend to go with a lot of my embellishment work, is that something that's a bit more subtle perhaps, but even if it doesn't completely register in your conscious mind, you pick up on those details and it just gives you a wow factor.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to add to that, like, don't be afraid of color. Sven is a very blue, black and white person, and I have like made him take color, and that orange with that blue is fucking gorgeous in person. I probably will use the rest of that blue on a coat for myself or for someone else with that orange because it's beautiful.
Yeah,
I'm loving it. It's just it's very striking, and it's because of the color. It's because of the color choices and the fact that you look at that and you know that somebody put the time in to do that, and it is just striking.
And the consistency and size of your stitching is really nice. It's not it's not made out of yarn and giant, and but it's large enough you can see the detail of the stitch. It's very nice. Really is nice. I would like to go to the
Go
Etruscan again.
Okay.
That what is the edging on that? What did you call it?
The Tabena.
Yes.
Yeah, somebody put in the comments that they're feeling overwhelmed. I have been doing this for decades now, and it's just like Ted said, like starting with the stitches makes a huge difference to your garment. Like, this is stuff that I'm doing because I'm just really into what I'm doing right now, but nobody expects you to embellish like these things are. But anyway, to answer Lois's question, or Hlutwige's question, that is silk bias tape. Well, it's linen. I cut the linen out and then I silk bias taped it down in alternating checky and red. And the checky this is a tip. If you're going to make checky bias tape, buy a Harlequin diamonds, and then you do it on the bias and it's checky. So.
You suck. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Let's go on.
Still me. I'm going to go quick though, because I've talked a lot. So this is, again, layers of silk that you can see on my apron front there. I'm looking at the right picture first. I have 3 different layers of silk, and then I'm taking just a blanket stitch around, and then my possamment is on the top. And then the other one is just a headband. It's a silk linen mix with silk on top with the possamment appliqued down. So it's actually, I just made a tube basically of the orange silk linen blend, and then put purple, or I guess that's blue, on top. It's actually super basic.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on. This is another Pazyryk/Scythian garment. I made this for Achaxe. This is again embroidery on leather as well as on wool. It's all done in just a chain stitch, both on the wool and on the leather. And then there are little teeny tiny nail heads, and then the little quatrefoil ones I actually made. I think that was a group effort that we made with a stamp to augment the shiny of it. And all of this is actually nicely pieced. I really like this jacket because there's lots of pieces and that I got to sew together with. I love doing that baseball stitch. It's one of my favorite things to do. All right, let's go on. And then a fur front. That's again on the left is reverse applique. So that ends up being just one layer of silk. You put all 3 layers of silk together, you sew them up in the design, and then you cut away everything that's not a banner. Be careful to not cut away the parts that are banner, because then you have a hole, which does happen, but that's, that's another thing. These pieces on the right were done for the fancy cloaks that Dame Megan brokered to make for the kingdom. They are applique and embroidery. That's all. God, now I can't remember. I think that the body of the lions are machine sewn down, and then everything else is hand stitched. And I didn't have the Harlequin, so you can't really see it in this picture, but the gold and white of the checky, each one has a little crown on it. Dame Megan found this beautiful fabric that had these little crowns woven in, and so I cut each of those little checkies so that they would have a little crown perfectly placed in the middle of each, and then stitched them all together. And I only took it apart twice. So there you go. Because I really like it when the corners line up. It just makes me, it sings to me. So I'm very, very proud of those. I hope you get a chance to see them at 12th night, when hopefully they will be worn again. Let's go on. Yay, that appears to be it. So let's thank you for that, gentlemen. And so let's go back to some questioning. I don't think there's any questions that I missed in the chat. I'd like to see if you guys have any, if you can like give us some advice to all these people, like Wendy was mentioning that she's feeling a little bit overwhelmed. Like once somebody picks what their persona or their time period is going to be, do you have any recommendations of how they might explore what kind of embellishments would be appropriate, and then what tools they're going to need to be able to excel at what they're doing? Because I think there's nothing better than having good quality needles. Certainly modern needles. I have used some period needles, but only in null binding and not for sewing. And then you know, what kind of things do you suggest to people to encourage them to go down one of these paths? I think Teadoir certainly is right in that doing things that are very simple, but doing them well is just as nice as doing something really extravagant.
I've got a couple of things that I would like to say as quickly as I can. I think one thing to consider is the completeness of your kit, right? So if, and obviously everyone's financial situations are different, but you know, it's like if you can have a pair of period shoes, you know, a persona appropriate belt, you know, maybe if you have a simple appropriate belt pouch, you know, or a knife, but if you can have all the little accoutrements that are appropriate, people will notice that. And so then your embellishments don't necessarily have to be over the top, right? Because if you are presenting from head to toe, even if nothing is particularly fancy, that in and of itself can be striking. So, and then from there, if you can pick a few things to, you know, it's like the simple chain stitch or the what have you. Obviously, you know, if you're going to do an Elizabethan, you have to go over the top. But, you know, think of what's appropriate for your persona. And while we're all assumed to be lords and ladies, you don't have to try and outshine the king. And maybe you shouldn't. I personally, and you know, if you want to be a peacock and if you want to be beautiful, more power to you, you do it. But, you know, it also doesn't hurt to say, I don't have to compete with these people because, you know, His Majesty or, you know, Her Majesty up there probably have a bunch of people that are doing this stuff for them, or they've been doing this for 20 or 30 years. So you don't have to compete with those people. You can just do what you're comfortable with And as long as you do it completely, you will look good. And so you don't have to stress about that. And I think that that's very important. We forget sometimes, and you know, we're not in a competition. I mean, I just realized that this jacket isn't finished, and I think I've been wearing it for the last 10 or 15 years, and it's not even done. You know, you don't have to worry about, you know, being more, bigger, better. You know, you can do simple things and look good, because the most important thing is to enjoy what you're doing and have fun. And that's just my thing that I think we forget sometimes, and I think it's a good thing to stress. And there was something else, but I've been running on my mouth, so I don't remember what it is. So I'm just going to be quiet now.
And to add on to what Teadoir said, it is really cool to present a full look, but there are ways to do that on a budget. And my biggest tip, if you have chosen a persona and a time period and a look that you want to achieve, is to look at pictures. If there's paintings, look at the artwork, look at the examples, and sort of internalize the aesthetic, and get a really good idea of what it is you want to look like and what the different elements of those outfits might be, and take yourself down to a thrift store and use that art eye and look at things in the thrift store, and maybe you find a really cool patterned dress shirt that's got the same pattern as some trim on something, and you can cut that up and use it on as trim on a tunic. Maybe you find a pair of shoes that look like they could be period shoes. Maybe you find a hat that you can repurpose. Maybe you go through the old jewelry and you find a bunch of things that can be used as plaques or as, you know, beads to applique on. There are ways to do this without spending a ton of money and a ton of time. So
Yeah. Once you can, if you can work on internalizing the aesthetic that you're going for, all of your other decisions are so much easier, because you know, okay, this sort of form, this sort of pattern is great, or this sort of pattern is going to look wrong. And one of the ways to do that is to get a bunch of your, whatever your good sources are for your time frame, whether it's finds, whether it's paintings, whatever, and put them up where you got to look at them every day. So your eye gets used to, okay, I'm looking for diamond twills and certain kinds of knot work, or I'm looking for plaques and swirly bits, or really I'm looking for a really clean aesthetic with some strategic embroidery and dagging, right? Just sort of be very strategic, because not every embellishment is appropriate for everything. And if you pick the one that's the most right for what you're trying to do, even if you don't have the layers, it's going to look great and go a lot further than if you had done a couple things that are cool, but don't necessarily go together. And maybe you spent a bunch of time learning 3 different things when one of them would be perfect. So really just concentrate on learning the aesthetic and looking closely at your examples to see what you're going to need to learn. And you can better balance your time and learning effort.
And another thing to consider is coming back to sort of the original question, you know, good places to start is you see that good gentle out there, you know, wearing that thing that you think is just awesome. You know, most of us are more than happy to talk about our awesome. So if you see somebody who has done something particularly well, ask them because when you start out, you don't necessarily know how to research even, or where to start looking, because we can talk about fines and all of the rest of it, and that can become overwhelming very quickly. So if you're just starting out, find that person who did the thing that you like and did it well, and just talk to them about it. And most of us will talk your ear off about it, and they can start you down that road of where to look.
Most of us are also happy to tell you about the dreadful errors we have made in the past. I think I remember the first pair of Norse trousers I tried to make. Oh my God, they were just dreadful. It was just awful. I had no idea what I was doing. But of course I just dove in, and I can make a pair of pants. How hard can a pair of pants be? It's just pants. Yeah, it's embarrassing. A little bit.
My first garb was a thrift shopped silk pirate shirt with ruffles on it, and a wool plaid tablecloth with a bungee cord waistband. And I thought I looked good, and I felt pretty, and I wore that a lot. So, there's nothing wrong with humble beginnings. Rifkin?
I made a lot of things out of sheets. I mean, I still make a lot of things out of curtains. It's big fabric, and it comes in so many different options. You got to find the one that's right for your project, though.
I was going to say, I think my first garb, my mom made for me at 18 or 19. I only learned how to sew so, I could impress women. But, yeah, you got to start somewhere and just feel good about it.
So I was going to say some really good projects to start learning how to do seam finishing and just like basic applique are haversacks, banners. I started on those kinds of things because you have like one piece of applique for your haversack, and you learn how to do different things to it and put it down, and you could couch things on it or you could paint things on it, and it's just a small manageable project. And the other thing I wanted to say is the juxtaposition to what Teddy was saying. For a very, very, very long time playing SCA, I was all about, I can't look above my station. And I just want to take that away from people. You can dress however you want. It's only in the last couple years where I've had fancy clothes. And if something fancy makes you feel pretty, then you should go for it and not worry about whether you have the award that you think you need to have to wear it. Obviously, I don't think there's anything about competing. Like, I don't think you should compete with anyone but yourself. But, find something that's going to make you feel pretty and go for it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like I said, it's like if you want to be a peacock, absolutely, you do you, boo. Just don't feel like you have to do the thing. If you want to kind of, do the subtle sublime, that's you can rock that look. If you want to, be blinding, you can rock that look too. Just do what you feel good doing, and that's going to show in your work. And I think somebody else mentioned, I don't remember who, but don't feel like you have to do everything. You can find just one thing that you're really good at and make friends with people and trade that. Hey, if you can do some possaments for me, it's like I will, embroider some stuff for you or what have you, and just in trade work. You don't have to be able to do all of it.
And I think Rifkin's right about the whole competing thing. You don't have to do competitions if you don't want to. There are some people who thrive on competitions and competing with others and looking better than the Joneses, and that's absolutely fine. If that floats your boat, do it. no one has to do competition. As Stormmaker this year, I've been doing what I'm calling challenges, so it's not a competition. I'm the one who picks who I think did the grooviest job, and I'm giving, and it gives me an excuse to give everybody who participates something that I've made. They are modest prizes, but everyone who participates and completes the challenge gets a gift for them to, cherish forever because I made it. No, that's kidding. I'm kidding. But so which brings me to, I just want to take a quick moment. This last week's challenge, I did a time challenge to create a COVID style mask in any form you wanted to do. And I had 5 people enter. And he was here. I don't know if he's still here, but my chosen victor in this challenge was Ronan McInlay from the Barony of Stromgarde with his Ronan the Barbarian mask. He made a COVID style mask that has a face painted on it with gouache. So it looks like his face, and it has a beard with braids, and it's extremely charming. Thank you, Ronan, for that, and thank you also to the other competitors. I will post later tomorrow. I will post various pictures, though you may have seen them on other people's feeds, but I will post pictures of what everybody did. I really appreciate it. Congratulations, Ronan.
Can I answer a question from the comment? I don't do black work, but I do a lot of embroidery, and you can buy these little LED light tables now. And I just stick the LED light table underneath with my pattern. And then I use a pen that's either wash outable or the heat ones, the friction pens, or something that I know is going to come off, or it's going to get covered if I'm doing like a really dense embroidery. And that's how I transfer all my patterns. I find it way less nerve-wracking than trying to use chalk or pounce or whatever.
You're doing an entire doublet that way. Is that what I read? A waistcoat in black work. Wow. Woo. Yeah, I would have to agree with Rivkin that using a light board is probably your best bet for transferring that. And tape things down so that what I like to do, what I've done in the past when I have a large thing that I have a large pattern for, is I tape down the fabric and I move the light board around underneath it, if that makes sense. Okay.
Someone's asking what trick you have to get patterns onto dark fabric. My trick is to use metallic Sharpie to lay my pattern down. You have to know that it's going to be permanent, so it's got to be something that you cover. But you can get a really fine tip Sharpie, and that'll lay down really nicely, and it stays, so it doesn't get rubbed off.
There's also white and yellow iron-on transfer pens, and you can go over your pattern with the pen and then iron it down. And it's not as good as drawing it yourself on the thing that doesn't show up as nice, but once you have it there, then you can go over it.
Ronan the Barbarian showed up. If you guys want to see his effort for the mask challenge, that is his. So what I do often when I have a repeating pattern, like I haven't done very much black work, so that's going to be a real challenge for you, and I hope you come up with some fabulous way to make it work. I usually make an actual I make a pattern out of cardboard. I mentioned it earlier, and in the past what I've used, believe it or not, is whiteout when I'm working especially with thicker fabrics. And so I lay the cardboard down and then I just paint around it, and the whiteout stays on long enough for me to be able to get the outer design down, and then it just flakes right off. It's fantastic. I've also just used gouache or other white or yellow paint, and then there's chalk as well, but you kind of have to do that little bits at a time. Anybody else have any ideas for that?
For bigger stuff, this is for printing specifically, I'll lay down a grid with the ruler and chalk and then place the individual bits. If the problem is if it can be solved by orientating it to a grid, that's often helpful to make sure stuff matches.
I use soap. If you like a little hotel soap and you kind of shave it down so it's got a nice sharp edge with a ruler, like when I'm laying out rectangular construction and stuff, just draw the lines with soap and then you can just rub it right off. Doesn't work with white fabric very well, but
There was another question in the comments about how far you can push it as far as authenticity. Honestly, that's a comfort level. Are you trying to make the most authentic thing ever? In which case, you know where you want to. I'm gonna start from the beginning there. You know the level that you want to achieve yourself. If you know you want to make it as authentic as possible, then you're going to want to examine your techniques, your processes, your materials, all of that. If you're going for an effect, totally get to balance that versus what you have, what you want to do, what you enjoy doing, what's easy, what's going to be super effective and flashy and great from a distance, but you know it's not the most authentic. That's fine.
Yeah, and a lot of us want to be able to wash the garments that we're using. The leather ones don't wash so much, so I try to be very careful with those. But that's why a lot of us use either the faux leather or the ultra suede for applique, because you can it's just a polyester fiber. You can throw that in the washing machine and it will be fine. You just need to make sure that what you're applying it to can take the weight, and that you and concentrate on your stitching and how you're putting it together to make it look, to give it that vibe. I think that's really one of the greatest things about the SCA. We are not a perfectly period society. We let people explore new things and do new things and try new things, and not necessarily use every single time a perfectly period technique.
you don't know, like in the beginning, you don't know what you don't know. So just like work with what you got, and then later you'll learn something new and you'll be like, I'm gonna do that different this time. And then your stuff evolves. So just, start where you're comfortable. You can only start from where you are, right?
I want to add that I push the envelope a lot. And the Tabena that we were looking at earlier, that probably would have been embroidery and not painted, but I have a full-time job, more than full-time job. And I wanted major impact without spending 2 years on it. So I painted it. And that's fine for me. I do that a lot, and I push the envelope with my Viking stuff too, because we don't have as much information as people think we have, and I'm gonna do what I think is maybe feasible, and that's cool with me.
Yeah, if you're a weaver, or a weaver, especially one of able to do quality work, they might be able to weave for you a period fabric. But most of us can't afford that, even though currently there are modern places where you can order beautiful reproductions of medieval fabrics. Whew, boy, they're worth every penny, I am sure. But you can also create that effect by using stamping techniques. So I think that's acceptable. I don't have a real problem with that. If a time came where I could buy silk from China that's a recreation of a first century Chinese fabric, I'm going to do it. But they're just not available, and they're rarely available in silk. There's a lot of things that are available in polyester, so you have to kind of be comfortable with that. But I want the real silk fabric. If I'm going to pay a pretty penny for it, I want real silk fabric.
And I think it's very important to remember that yes, most of us have jobs. We don't have either an entire winter where, you know, you can't go outside and you're stuck around the fire and you've got nothing else to do but do the thing. Or while we're all supposed to be noble, the reality is we're not. We don't have, you know, groups of servants to, you know, spend a month making a gown. You've just got to do what you can do. And it's kind of difficult at times because we are attempting to portray really wealthy people, powerful people, and on average most of us aren't. So you have to balance that. So I had no problem at all faking a hand stitch with a sewing machine because I don't have that time to do it. You know, I would love to have some hand woven wool, but you know, I can't afford it. So you do what you can and you do the best that you can and don't stress about it because we're not really lords and ladies. We don't have those resources. At some point you just have to pretend and fake it.
I have many apprentices and have had a lot of apprentices, and people say, well, why don't you just have your apprentice do that for you? Well, unfortunately, they're trying to make a living as well. It's not like I just have them at a whim. Darling, go weave me 6 yards of this wool from this tomb that I need for something someday, you know. So yeah, you just gotta, like you said, just gotta do what you can do, what you can do, and that you are gonna enjoy doing, and that you're gonna feel good about wearing or giving to somebody, that kind of thing. And just learn as you go. That's what we've all done. We have learned as we go. We did not pop out of the ground with these skills. We struggled just like you guys are. I still struggle.
I just want to say one more thing. I am sort of an expert in finding deals, and I know that there was a lot of silk in my stuff, but most of that stuff is obies that I buy on discount, and you get an obie and it's like, I don't know, 6 yards of, you know, maybe that wide, and they're $10. So there are ways. Also, AliExpress has some of the Sartor stuff at a fraction of the cost, like a third. So there are definitely ways, and I've found diamond twill on fabric.com before. You just have to be willing to look if you're interested in having that kind of perioid fabric. You can get it without paying through the nose for it.
And another thing to consider is that sometimes going that extra yard and doing the period thing can actually save you money. You know, with the Norse stuff, I was never happier than when I realized that actually piecing the stuff together and not just making a simple, you know, old-fashioned T-tunic, but piecing it together. Wow, I can afford to use wool. I can afford to use linen because this is taking a third of what I would otherwise be doing. So yeah, you can find things in the bargain bins. You can, you know, and sometimes maybe you want to save up for that one item that you can't do yourself, that, you know, like a pair of period shoes, or I always come back to that period shoes because I'm way too proud of my stupid period shoes. But, you know, you can find, maybe you save up for that one thing and then you fake it everywhere else, and you can just really look good with just judicious application of your limited resources.
I'm also fairly convinced that even in period, people fudged things a bit. You know, they just had to have, because if you just don't have time, or you don't have the resources, or you don't have the money to be able to put together something super glamorous. Not everybody in the Middle Ages or before wore super glamorous clothes. In fact, most people didn't. They wore simple clothing that was going to last for a long period of time without a great deal of washing. So
Yeah. One, thrift stores, they're wonderful. If you have the time to stock them, or goodwill.com, or your thing of choice, you can often find wonderful stuff that you can repurpose. But people had a lot fewer clothes than we do. Clothing was worth a lot more. And so you took good care of it, you maintained it, and just like, and if you go for something that you know is going to serve you for a while, then you don't have to replace it as quickly. And you can have a nice thing for longer. It's going a different place with this, I'm sorry. And, oh yes, and the amount of things that were cut down, remade, passed on, got that from so-and-so when they replaced it. This used to be dad's and we cut it down for the kid. All of that. If something was really nice, it probably got passed down and had multiple lives than with just one person. So that sort of hand stuff around, get it from your friends when they're not wearing that anymore, that's the same thing. The other thing is, if you can get together and get folks where someone can do one part and somebody else can do embroidery, you can have really nice things without having to be really good at 5 different things.
You get good at one thing and then trade it.
Yes.
And about the faking it and kludging things together, the caftan that this was based on had fur trim, but it was made to sit open like this, right? And so the back side had no trim on it. It came up the front, and then where the front panel folded over, it stopped. So yeah, they absolutely did fake things out and made the most of their scarce resources.
Oh,
and that was somebody important.
Well, the piecing thing is huge too, because when you look at accent garments with that pieced silk trim, it's not pieced so that the pattern's continuous. It's pieced so that they got the most fancy fabric out of what they had. So it'll be roundels not lining up, but they got as much of the good fabric into their garment as they possibly could.
Does anyone have any other questions for us?
We were just talking about clothing that's, you know, kind of been around in the chat. You can see it there. But I think that one of my goals has been lately, especially with making baronial cloaks or champions cloaks, is that they last. I want them to last for a long time. I want you know, I want them to be cherished by the people that wear them, and I want them to be useful and sturdy enough that they can go through a lot of life. And the same thing, I think, is what I developed over the years in making things, which is why I like to really finish all of the seams in a garment, whether it's appropriate or not. I like all of the seams to either be covered or flat felled, or so there's no raw edges. So that garment can, you know, either be passed on. And it's weird. It is weird. And Achaxe is going to deal with this because her kids are going to outgrow stuff, and those are going to get passed down. And she's going to be wandering around an event in 16 years, and there's going to be some strange kid walking by in something that she made 25 years ago. And that is super. I love that idea. I love the idea of creating garments that are going to be long-lived.
It happens all the time. My oldest is going to be 18 this year, and I see things that I made him as an infant all the time, and it's it's a little mind-blowing, but super cool.
Jacqueline is asking how to edit modern design aesthetic out of works. Why did I do it almost subconsciously? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. Can anybody address that?
Well, I think like with the comment with the trim there. So that something doesn't necessarily match up, you know, that they don't care. The I think the headbee trousers, the bizarre color combinations that went into that. And, you know, the whole argument about what's like, well, was that intentional? Was that just the fabric that they happen to have? Is that a mend? We want our seams to be symmetrical, but there are finds where it's like, you know, suddenly there's a seam right here because that was just the fabric that they had to piece together. The other arm, you know, maybe doesn't have that seam because they had a large enough piece of fabric. I think maybe that's what they're getting at, that we have our specific conventions. You know, all of your seams have to be you know, symmetrical. You can't have just an extra seam in one place that's not repeated someplace else. You know, things have to match up.
And I think going back to that whole idea, of learning the aesthetic, putting up pictures and taking a look at it and kind of absorbing that, I think is a really good idea. And I think that's the only way you can edit out the modern aesthetic that we have. I still suffer from it. I like to, if I'm using a patterned fabric, I want them to match up. And sometimes that's appropriate, absolutely appropriate for the patterns to meet and match correctly. But sometimes it really doesn't matter at all. So I think it's also a comfort level issue. If you have to do things that are matchy and straight as an arrow and all of that, then do that. But it's not absolutely necessary that every garment be like that.
One of the things that Her Grace hammered into me was mitering corners on trim. Like that had to be done. And sometimes I do that and sometimes I don't. And sometimes on the same garment, I'll miter one corner and then the other one comes down and it's just enough that I can kind of eke it out, but it can't miter. It's got to just be butted. And so sometimes there's one mitered corner and one butted corner on one garment. And I just hide that one butted corner from Hlutwige.
And since that time, I have learned that there are a lot of period garments, extant period garments, that don't have nicely mitered corners, just kind of crapified, you know, just stitch around that corner, just force it together and smash it into the corner and it'll be fine. It's just, it's like learning how to use a file. A file is not sandpaper. A file is a file. It works in one direction. So don't use it as though it's sandpaper. That was one thing that Manfred taught me. And so I think mitering corners is one of those things I just torture my textile apprentices with.
I wish I could remember who said it, but you know, the comment that if they're close enough to criticize your stitches, they're close enough to kick. You know, you can't, don't worry. As long as you're having a good time. And that was, I'm pretty sure that was a, that was a Laurel, I think, that said that too.
I would not be surprised. I don't like that. I like the Laurel handshake in that I like to look at people's stuff and see what they've done, but I don't want to be, you guys know what the Laurel handshake is? Everybody nod, or if you do. So it's an old joke. It's not very nice. But the Laurel handshake is where a Laurel reaches out to shake your hand, and they don't grab your hand, they grab the seam of your wrist and turn it over and look at it. Kind of thing. And I like to do that too, but I'd like to believe I first introduce myself and say, hey, did you make that? That's really nice. And could I look at the back of your embroidery? Wow, that looks like the back of my embroidery. Congratulations. It's a mess. And here's ways you can fix that kind of thing. Anyway, Laurel handshake. It looks like we don't have any more questions unless somebody really has some burning question, or if any of our panelists have something else they want to say. I think I got all of my ideas for questions. Explore, tools, a good pair of shears. several sizes of shears. Yep, that's all I've got.
For applique, I use these curved blade scissors to get around corners of the really intricate appliques I do. They're fantastic and keep them sharp. That's what I have to say.
Think about your workspace. If you're going to be doing something complex, you don't want to be fighting against yourself in your space. And that also, you know, with your shears, you make sure that you have good tools to work with, because if you're going to be hand stitching something for 20 hours, you don't want to be cussing and swearing the whole time. I mean, I do, even with the best tools and the best setup, I'm constantly swearing at my work. But, you know, if you can, anything that you can do to make your process easier for yourself, which also includes doing studies. You know, I learned how to do a chain stitch because I'm looking at a beautiful garment for my wife, and I knew she was going to kill me if I gobbed it up. So I just got a piece of wool and practiced. Don't be afraid to practice before you commit to. I think somebody else said that, before you commit to hours and hours and hours of something that turns out meh. Spend a little time on the outset to make sure that A, you want to do the thing, and that B, you know, you've got it down. It's always good to do a little bit of practice on a piece of scrap that, you know, if it looks terrible, you can just throw it away.
You burn it. You always burn that. Sorry. Okay, maybe I'm the only one who does that. It's what was I going to say? I'm laughing so much at my own cleverness that I've forgotten what I was going to say. It was about the what you had said. Okay, somebody else talk, and I'll think.
I was just going to elaborate more on the sample it. If you've got something new going on, whether it's new fabric, new paint, new pattern, and try it. If you're that sort of person that doesn't want to spend that effort without getting something out of it, do the smallest version, do the coif and then do the waistcoat, do the undergarment and then the overgarment, so that you figure out that I got to do this one thing with the chain stitch, or I can only make the seam finish work if I, on the thing that's not going to be as obvious or that you don't have to wear. Because I don't particularly enjoy the choice between, do I rip out this one seam that was clearly where I was learning how to do this thing that shows, or do I, and which will be a pain, or do I live with it and know that it was not as good as the rest of it forever? I don't like either of those options. I'd rather make a little pointless scrap until I can figure out how that treatment works.
Yeah, because I know I am absolutely always going to live with it. I'm not going to go back and fix it if it's for myself. So that's one of the reasons why I force myself to start doing studies, because I'm not going to go back. You know, for somebody else, I'll go back, but for myself, I'm not going to go back and fix that. Yeah, those 5 inches of terrible looking stitches or seam or whatever it is.
So my other two things to say, as everybody goes forward in their journey, and that includes all of us who are well experienced. Use your village. Use the people that you already know. You'd be surprised who might actually have like a really good idea of how to transfer patterns onto something for black work. And the one nice thing about the SCA is if you come across somebody who's doing black work, you can just saddle right up to them and say, hey, I want to do something like that. How do you solve this problem? So use your village, use the people you know and the people that they know. Just say, hey, I want to do this thing and I don't know how to start. Do you know anybody who might know how to do that thing? The other thing, as an extended village, as it were, is use YouTube. Oh my goodness. There are some amazing videos of people, like how to do gores. everybody struggles with gores, and I think there's at least half a dozen different YouTube videos I've watched now of somebody making these fantastic gores. I'm like, wow, that's neat. I got to try that. So when in doubt, Google it. How do I make a gore? How do I do chain stitch? How do I do null binding? There is a vast well of people out there who are ready and willing to help you learn something. Are we done? I think we're done. I think we all talked ourselves out.
I think we're all talked out. It's really warm. All of you people go and drink some water now. Water.
Thank you to everyone for participating. Congratulations to Ronan for being victorious in my Stormmaker challenge. I want you to all know that Stormmaker challenges are open to anyone, anywhere, and I will, if you are interested in doing something with them, let me know. I will tell you what's upcoming and whether or not and then you can tell me whether or not you'd be interested. My thanks also to everybody who organized this, including Her Grace Kiva, who asked me to be in charge of this. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a couple of things. I hope everybody else did as well.
And you
Thank
can
you.
find information on the Stormmaker challenges on the Stromguard Facebook page.